Defiance 2050 is a bit of an unusual one. It's essentially a remaster of a game that came out over half a decade ago, and it's now free to play for people on PC and consoles, where it hasn't before in the terms of Xbox One and PlayStation 4. But essentially we're going back to day one Defiance, when it originally launched, before all the expansions, before all the weekly events and stuff like that. And besides that, it's a bit of an unusual thing by the fact that it, like I said, it's a half a decade later, and even beyond sort of the shortcomings that I'll talk about in terms of gameplay and mechanics right now, it's quite buggy in terms of server instability. There's been far too many times I've had a firefight where the enemy would just sort of not take the bullets, or would sort of bounce around and jump around, meaning trying to track them and sort of gauge their movement was sometimes impossible, but mostly just frustrating. And for a game that's been out essentially so long, and this is just a relaunch on new systems, that's bitterly disappointing. However, that's something that could potentially, and by the time maybe this comes out, would have been fixed. But there are inherent problems here that I will very briefly mention on, and that is just that the mission variety and sort of its implementation isn't a ton of fun. Essentially, it's a third-person shooter, and the shooting isn't enjoyable enough to warrant all the repetitive shooting missions you'll be doing. And I think sort of that's something when I look at the biggest comparison I could think of when playing it was Destiny, or Destiny 2 in this instance, where people may not be happy with the variety of content there, or just how much there is to play, but the core gunplay is insanely satisfying. I cannot say the same here for Defiance 2050. It is functional at best, and that's about all I can say about the shooting. There's here, compared to the original releases, there's classes, but you can switch between the classes whenever you want. Every class can pretty much hold any weapon, so it doesn't feel like there's much point to it. There are slight variations and differences, but not enough to sort of warrant a class-based system. It just doesn't feel different enough. And just getting around, some, even to the point of some enemy spawns, just don't make sense to me. Like, I was trying to go to a vendor, and it was right beside a spot where enemies would respawn every minute or so, so I couldn't really get in and sort of sell my mods or my weapons and then buy some new stuff without having to stop twice or three times just because the enemies respawned, and I had to go deal with them again because there wasn't enough players in the area to take them out, which meant it was just like this weird stop and start feeling that just wasn't that much fun. It's just one of those unusual things where I understand where an online game you need to sort of have the respawn timer fairly regular. It's just its placement was a bit unusual to me. And beyond that, sort of there are like public events like the ARC systems to take down, which is fun. Like, it's fun to sort of take out a hellbug and like nest and have a group of players come together and take it out, but it doesn't add as much to it as I would have hoped. It's just like, hey, I'm doing the same thing now. It's just now I can see other people doing the same thing, so we're kind of both in this tedium together. And that only lasts for so long before I'm like, I don't want anymore. Visually, I played this on an Xbox One X. There doesn't seem to be Xbox X and Xbox One X enhancements, and if there are, it's basically just to make the frame rate better. Visually, this looks dated. Like, the word remaster was being thrown around when this game launched on Xbox One and PlayStation 4, and to be honest with you, I don't really see any visual upgrades. Seems like maybe the distance that you can see is a bit further. Things still pop in just right in front of me. Sometimes I can't chug a little bit. I don't know if it's server side or if it's the client. It's just very weird. It feels like a game from half a decade ago, but it's on new systems, and even though it's a re-release, it's behind in terms of updates, in terms of optimization. The servers aren't great. It's unusual. The one good thing I have to say about it, I don't know if this is a positive or negative, is it's very easy to sort of switch off and just play the game and level up. It's very easy to sort of, to me, it's the perfect podcast game where the story just isn't interesting enough to care about. Sort of the cutscenes, it's voice acted well enough. However, it's just, to me, I call it the perfect podcast game because I could just switch on a podcast for 2 hours, go grind, level up. 2 hours pass, I've leveled up a bit, I've gotten new gear and equipment, and yeah, I feel like you kind of get that itch scratched, and it's a bit of a relaxation, but it's only in tandem with doing something else. I'll come back to it and sort of maybe do another video in a little bit, but for now I am at times finding it a little bit fun, but for the most part it's completely middle of the road and forgettable.